They laughed when I said I wanted to be an artist. Now they're asking for money. I never thought I'd be writing one of these long posts. But here I am. I've been holding on to this for years, and it's been bubbling up more and more lately, especially since I got that email last week. You'll understand why that email matters by the end of this. But for now, let me start at the beginning, the place where everything started to unravel, just because I had a dream and they didn't like it. I'm an artist. And no, I don't mean that in the I sketch anime on the side way. No hate to anyone who does. But this was always more than a hobby. It was my calling, even when I couldn't explain it. Since I was 5, I saw the world differently. I noticed shadows most people ignored. I could get lost in the colors of an oil stain on concrete, or the way rust spread on old metal like a slow, angry infection. I used to spend hours just looking at things. My dad thought it was weird, said I had too much time to think. But that's the thing about growing up in a family like mine. Dreams are only respected if they look like paychecks. My mom is a nurse. A good one. She worked nights for years when we were little, and I'll never pretend she didn't work hard. But she's also the kind of person who thinks any job without a uniform or a badge is a joke. If I wasn't studying something with a direct path to a license, she didn't care. My dad was even worse. He did HVAC and loved to tell everyone how he built his life with his hands. Which, yeah, cool. But he never understood that building something on canvas takes hands too. To him, art was what bored rich kids did in college while real people worked. Then there was my brother, Josh. Golden child, straight A's, business school, internship at a tech firm before he even graduated. My parents talked about him like he was royalty. I was the creative one, which was their polite way of saying disappointment. I remember it clearly. Senior year of high school, sitting at the dinner table, spaghetti night. My hands were shaking because I'd finally worked up the nerve. I'd applied to 6 art schools behind their backs. Small ones, but good ones. One had already sent me an acceptance. So I said, I've decided I'm going to art school. I want to be a painter. They laughed. I don't mean chuckled. They laughed, like I told them I wanted to join a circus or dig for buried treasure in the backyard. My mom put down her fork, shook her head like I'd told her I was pregnant with a ghost. My dad wiped his mouth and said, "So, you want to be a starving artist, huh? Gonna live in a van and beg tourists to buy your doodles?" Josh just smirked. "That's bold," he said. "You know you're not exactly Picasso, right?" I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just left the table. But I remember the feeling, like someone had taken a paint scraper to my chest and peeled away the last layer of hope. They didn't just dismiss my dream. They humiliated me for having it. A few weeks later, my dad called me into the garage like he was about to teach me how to change a tire or something. Instead, he gave me an ultimatum. If you go through with this art crap, you're on your own. No money, no help, no roof. I was 17. I had $800 saved from working weekends at the local movie theater, but I still said, okay. I don't think he expected that. He blinked a few times, then scoffed. Good luck living off finger paints. I packed that night. Didn't even wait for graduation. I finished school living on a friend's couch. Borrowed clothes. Ate instant noodles. I deferred my acceptance to art school by 1 year, so I could work full-time and scrape together enough for tuition. My parents didn't call once. Not even on my birthday. The struggle years. That first year was brutal. I worked in a bookstore by day and painted at night, sometimes until 3 a.m. I did commissions on the side, mostly cheap stuff for people on Craigslist. Portraits of their dogs. Weird fan art. A guy once paid me $40 to paint him as a centaur. I was exhausted, broke, and hungry most of the time, but for the first time in my life, I felt free. No one was breathing down my neck asking why I was wasting my time. No one mocking me for seeing beauty in something useless. I finally enrolled in a small but respected art college. Took the bus every day. Couldn't afford supplies half the time, so I dumpster dug behind craft stores. There's a whole ecosystem of poor art students trading beat-up sketchbooks and broken pastels. We made it work, but it wasn't easy. I got pneumonia in my second year. Missed 2 weeks of classes. My advisor told me to consider dropping out. I didn't. I kept pushing. 1 sketch at a time. 1 gig at a time. I graduated 3 years later. Not top of my class, but close. Still no word from my family. I don't even remember which post changed everything. I had started uploading time-lapse videos of my process, just for fun. painting big, abstract pieces on canvas with junk materials, household paint, brushes taped to mops. It was messy, wild, kind of hypnotic. People liked it. One of my videos went viral. Then another. Suddenly I was getting thousands of followers. Then tens of thousands. Then sponsors. Commissions started rolling in. I was able to move out of my roach-infested apartment and into a small but beautiful studio. I started selling originals for real money. The day I sold a piece for $4,000, more than my dad probably made in a week, I cried. Not out of joy, out of grief. Because the first thing I wanted to do was call my mom. But I knew she wouldn't care unless she needed something. Years passed, radio silence. I didn't reach out to them. They didn't reach out to me. I heard through mutual friends that Josh got engaged, then married. Never invited me. My mom had surgery. No one told me. I got interviewed for a small arts magazine. My old high school shared the post on Facebook. Still, nothing from the family. Part of me was relieved. I didn't want them to only reach out because I was doing okay. But I knew the day would come. And last week, it finally did. Let me tell you something most people won't admit. Success doesn't feel like revenge. Not at first. When I started making real money from my art, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't want to shove it in my dad's face or send my mom a check with finger paints written in the memo. I felt guilty. Like I was breaking some rule I wasn't allowed to question growing up. You don't make a living from doing what you love. You suffer. You survive. You earn your keep doing something you hate. So that you deserve rest. That was the doctrine in my house. That's why it took me years to believe that I wasn't just lucky. I was good. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind a little. After that first video blew up, 1.3 million views in 4 days. I started getting DMs from art collectors, gallery owners, and weird people who want to buy my used brushes or offer me NFTs. It was 2020. Everything was NFTs. I ignored the hype at first. I'd seen other creators go viral and vanish. But the momentum kept building. A rep from a small LA gallery reached out and said he wanted to feature me in a collective show. He couldn't pay for travel, but I had just enough saved for a bus ticket and a Motel 6. I packed 6 of my best pieces in garbage bags, stuffed them into 2 duffel bags, and took a 17-hour ride down the coast. When I walked into that gallery, tired, underdressed, and smelling like McDonald's fries, I thought for sure they'd laugh me out of the room. They didn't. The gallery owner, Marco, walked over, looked at my pieces, and said, "You have teeth. That's rare. Most people paint like they're afraid of being seen. Yours bite back." I nearly cried in the bathroom afterward. That night, one of my pieces sold for $2,500. I hadn't seen that much money in my account at one time ever. The buyer? A middle-aged woman in vintage glasses who told me my painting reminded her of the time she broke up with her ex-husband and drove into the desert to scream. Ugly and beautiful, she said. Just like me. That show led to another. Then another. I did interviews, panels, podcasts. I got invited to speak at a small art school, not mine, ironically, where I told a room full of first years that yes, you can make it as an artist if you're willing to fail 1,000 times first. I got smart about business. Hired a part-time assistant to help with commissions. I created a storefront. Started offering limited prints. They sold out in hours. One day, a fashion brand reached out and asked to license a pattern from one of my abstract pieces for a streetwear drop. That deal paid more than my first 3 years of painting combined. People think success is one big break. It's not. It's a series of tiny cracks in a wall you keep slamming your head against until finally, the light starts to leak through, lonely on the other side. But here's the thing no one warns you about. When you finally get out, it's lonely as hell. I had a new apartment with huge windows, a studio space that smelled like turpentine and cedar. People called me inspirational. My followers were in the hundreds of thousands. Strangers adored me. But my phone never buzzed with messages from home. No, we saw your article in that art magazine. Proud of you. No, congrats on a gallery show. Not even a, hey, how are you doing? My friends told me. They'll come around. Just wait until you're really big. But that was the part that hurt the most, because it meant they'd only come back when they thought I was useful. About 2 years into my career, I made the mistake of visiting my hometown for the holidays. I didn't tell anyone except my old high school friend, Anna, whose family basically adopted me after mine cut me off. She picked me up from the train station, and I stayed in her guest room. It was weird being back, like visiting the ghost of the life I'd shed. Everything was smaller. Even the streets seemed more brittle. I didn't plan to see my family. I told myself I was over it. But one night, after too much mulled wine and nostalgia, Anna convinced me to drive past my parents' house, just to see. The porch light was on. There were Christmas lights, the same old blinking ones they used when I was a kid. It looked the same, like they just kept living as if I'd never existed. And then I saw them, all of them. Mom, Dad, Josh, his wife. They were on the porch laughing, clinking glasses, music playing inside. My family, my blood, celebrating while I sat in a parked car like a stranger. I wanted to knock. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march up and say, "Look at me now. Look at what you threw away." But I didn't. I just watched for a few minutes. Then I told Anna to drive. Time moved fast after that. I started collaborating with larger names. I got featured in an art magazine that called me the Jackson Pollock of the digital generation, which made me laugh out loud. I did a solo exhibit in Chicago that sold out in 2 nights. A Netflix director bought one of my canvases for their home office. Money stopped being tight. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to check my bank balance before buying groceries. I paid off all my student debt in one shot. I donated anonymously to my old college's art supply fund. I thought I was healed. But trauma isn't a splinter you pull out. It's scar tissue that flares up every time you stretch. And then, last week, I got the email. Subject line, "Hope you're doing well. Can we talk?" Sender, josh.sullivan@_____.com. I stared at it for a full minute before I opened it. My hands went cold. Asterisk, "Hey, it's been a long time. I know things ended badly, but I've been following your career and just wanted to say congratulations. What you've done is honestly impressive. I wouldn't be reaching out unless it was important. Mom and Dad are in a bit of a situation right now. Dad lost his job last year, and Mom's hours got cut. They're behind on the mortgage, and things are looking rough. I know we didn't treat you great before. That's on us. But you've done really well for yourself, and if there's any way you could help, even just a loan, I think it could really make a difference. I'm not asking for a handout, just family helping family. Hope to hear from you. Josh Asterisk." I stared at that message for an hour. They hadn't said a word to me in almost 7 years. Not after I left. Not after I made it. Not after I was featured in 2 magazines, a docuseries, and had work in 3 galleries. But now they needed money. And suddenly I was family again. It's surreal how quickly the past can come knocking, even after you've slammed the door shut and built a whole new life on the other side. That email from Josh didn't just shake me. It cracked something open. For days, I couldn't paint. I barely ate. I kept rereading the message, trying to make sense of the fact that my brother, who hadn't said a word to me in nearly 7 years, was suddenly acting like we were part of the same team. It wasn't just what he wrote. It was what he didn't write. There was no "I'm sorry." No, we were wrong. No ownership. Just a soft nudge toward my wallet and a gentle appeal to the thing I'd always longed for, connection. Family. I waited 5 days before responding. My reply, "Hi, Josh. Asterisk, I'll be honest. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I appreciate the kind words, though they ring a little hollow considering everything that happened. You say things ended badly, but let's be real. They didn't just end. I was pushed out, ridiculed, abandoned. I wasn't even worth a phone call when I was sick, when I graduated, or when I was featured in my first gallery show. Asterisk. And now that I have money, suddenly I'm family again. I'm not saying I don't care. Despite everything, I don't want Mom and Dad to suffer. But I'm not sure you understand what it's like to be remembered only when you're useful. Let me think about it. Name. I expected a defensive response. What I got instead was an invitation. Josh emailed back asking if we could talk by phone. I said yes. Part of me wanted to hear his voice, see if it was any different. Spoiler, it wasn't. We talked the next night. "Hey," he said, like we'd just spoken last week. I'm really glad you're open to talking. I kept it short. You said they're in trouble? Yeah, the mortgage company's threatening foreclosure. Dad hasn't worked in months. Mom's too proud to apply for assistance. They're barely scraping by. I paused, and no one thought to call me until now. There was silence on his end. Then, I think we were embarrassed. And yeah, we should have reached out sooner. But it's not like you reached out either. That hit like a slap. Not like I reached out? You mean after I was kicked out for following my dream? After being mocked, laughed at, ignored for years? I asked, what exactly would I have reached out for? He sighed, and I could picture him rubbing his temple the way he always did when he got cornered. Look, I know things weren't great back then, but people change. Things change. All I'm saying is, if you can help, you should. They're still your parents. That was the moment I realized something. Josh didn't see my success as a result of hard work or sacrifice. To him, I was still the weird kid who scribbled in notebooks and didn't understand real life. But now I had money, and money, in our family, made you worth listening to. I finally asked, what exactly are you asking me for? He hesitated. $30,000. I nearly dropped the phone. Apparently that would cover the mortgage debt, the back taxes, and give them enough cushion to avoid foreclosure. They'd pay me back, of course, when Dad got back on his feet, when things stabilized, when the economy shifted, when pigs flew. I asked one simple question. Did you ever tell them I was doing well? Josh paused. They've seen a few things online. But no, I never sat them down and said, hey, she's made it. Why not? Another pause. Because I didn't want them to ask me for help first. Later that week, Mom emailed me. Her first message in 7 years. No apology. Just, I heard from Josh that you're doing well. I always knew you had talent. Even if I didn't say it enough back then. We're proud of you. We'd love to talk sometime. It'd be nice to catch up. Also, we're in a bit of a tight spot financially right now. Anything you can do would mean a lot. Love you. It was so casual. Like the last decade of silence hadn't happened. Like they hadn't laughed me out of my own dream. I almost wanted to scream. But I didn't. Instead, I sat down and wrote out everything they never let me say. The letter I never sent. You told me my art was a waste of time. You mocked me, punished me, shut me out. You didn't call when I left. You didn't call when I almost died sick in a freezing apartment. You didn't come to my graduation. You didn't support me when I sold my first piece, or when I was finally able to eat something better than ramen for the first time in weeks. But now you remember I exist. Now I'm your daughter again, because I have money. I don't owe you the success. I earned it in the shadow of your disbelief. I earned it when I worked 3 jobs before a set of brushes. I earned it when I slept on floors and borrowed paints and painted on cardboard because I couldn't afford canvas. I earned it when you forgot about me. And now you want a handout. You want to skip the apology and go straight to the transaction. No, you don't get to erase the past with a bank transfer. You don't get to call me family only when it's convenient. I don't hate you, but I don't owe you anything either. The decision, I didn't send the letter, but I also didn't send the money. Instead, I sent a different email. One line, I can't help you financially, but I wish you well. Josh never replied. Mom sent one more message 2 days later. I didn't raise you to be this cold. That one made me laugh, because she hadn't raised me at all. Not after I chose to become myself. Where I am now, it's been 3 weeks since I said no. No to guilt. No to conditional love. No to a family that only remembered me when they wanted something. And for the first time in years, I've started painting just for me again. No pressure. No deadlines. No proving anything to anyone. Just color. Just movement. Just freedom. My next exhibit is called Estrangement. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm finally home. You ever sit in a room so quiet it makes your own heartbeat feel loud? That's what it's been like these past few weeks. Not lonely, just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a storm. Since I told my family no, it's been total radio silence. No guilt trips. No more messages. Just a deafening absence. But weirdly, that silence has been louder than any insult they ever threw at me. It echoes. It vibrates with everything they didn't say. Like, we were wrong. We're sorry. You didn't deserve that. And the worst part? They probably think I'm being dramatic. That I'm just some bitter art freak with a grudge. But this isn't bitterness. It's grief. Grief isn't always about death. Sometimes it's about finally accepting that the people you want to love you just don't know how. I grieved the idea of family for years without realizing it. I kept telling myself that one day they'd see me, not just my work, me, that they'd understand that art wasn't rebellion. It was the only thing that ever made me feel whole, but they never got there, and maybe they never will. Last weekend was the opening of my new solo exhibit. The title, Estrangement, subtitled, Portraits of People I Knew Before I Knew Myself. It was the most personal work I've ever done. Not portraits in the traditional sense. No faces. Just emotion. Huge canvases, layered with texture. Sand, shredded paper, cracked glue, melted wax, and threads ripped from clothes I wore in my early 20s. Each one represented a phase. Mockery, dark red swirls slashed with jagged silver lines. Inheritance, a hollow silhouette carved into layers of paint. Phone call, a gray background with a single gold thread suspended in resin. No, completely blank, except for one black in the bottom corner. People wept. A man told me, mockery, reminded him of the first time his father said he'd never amount to anything. A woman said, inheritance, made her feel like someone had finally painted her relationship with her sister. No one asked what they meant, they just felt it. That's the magic of art. It doesn't need approval. It just needs honesty. Did I ever love them? Someone at the show asked me, do you still love your family? It caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about that word in a while. My answer? I think I love who I wish they were, but not who they chose to be. I love my mom, the version in my head who supported me, who showed up to school shows and hugged me when I doubted myself. I love my dad, the one who came to see my first apartment and said, you did this all by yourself, kid. I'm proud of you. I love the imaginary version of Josh who protected me instead of throwing me under the bus for validation. But those versions never existed outside my own hope. And I'm finally learning to stop grieving people who are still alive, because sometimes acceptance is more powerful than forgiveness. A small twist I didn't expect. Last night, I got a DM on Instagram from someone I didn't expect. Josh's wife. Let's call her Rachel. Asterisk. Hey, I know this is out of the blue. I won't take much of your time. Just wanted to say, I saw your exhibit. A friend invited me. I didn't know it was yours until I walked in and saw Inheritance. I cried. I'm sorry for everything you went through. I've seen the way your family talks about you behind closed doors. You didn't deserve any of it. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're reaching more people than you think. Asterisk. It didn't fix everything, but it helped. Because sometimes truth comes on the edge of a circle that tried to keep you out. Closure doesn't always come gift-wrapped. I used to think closure looked like reconciliation, like a tearful hug on a doorstep or a phone call that ended with, I'm proud of you. But now I think closure is something else. Sometimes closure is walking past your parents' house and not feeling like you should knock, seeing your brother's name on your screen and hitting ignore, painting something without thinking about whether they'd get it, hearing silence, and feeling peace instead of panic. Closure is the moment you stop performing for people who were never your audience. Where I am now, I wake up every day in a home I built with brushstrokes. I work with people who see my vision. I go to sleep knowing that every inch of my life was painted by me. No shortcuts, no cheats, no borrowed belief. Just me, my hands, and the color I fought for. And no matter how many apologies I never got, I've learned to give myself the one that mattered most. I'm proud of you for surviving them. That's my story. Thanks for listening.